This is The Creative Funding Show, a podcast for authors, YouTubers, and podcasters who want to fund the work they love without selling out.
Welcome back to The Creative Funding Show. I'm Thomas Umstattd Jr., and with me today is Bremner Morris. He's the head of Patreon's Creator Partnerships and Creator Success Teams, to be renamed soon, I imagine. And he basically helps creators join the platform and become more successful once they get on Patreon. So, Bremner, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, what is Patreon?
What is Patreon? So Patreon is a membership platform for artists and creators to get paid by their most loyal fans. And what I mean by that is artists and creators can use Patreon to engage with their audience on a monthly recurring basis and establish a membership fee with those fans by offering them something exclusive and unique as part of that membership campaign. So today we have about 70,000 creators on the platform, processing about 150 million payments a year. And to date, we've processed about 300 million payments back to creators. So pretty exciting.
It's very exciting, especially when you consider 150 million a year and 300 total. Yeah. That means the growth curve is up and to the right quite a bit. So a lot of new people. How many new creators are joining the platform on a given week or given month?
On a given week or a month, we're adding, in the hundreds of creators per week, and then per month, hundreds and hundreds. We have a lot of folks that are joining the platform just to test it out. But then we have a number of folks who join, and then they have very significant outcomes because they have a very established fan base. One of the things about Patreon is that it's really for folks who have that established fan base, because what they're doing is converting their most loyal audience into a paying subscriber.
If no one knows who you are, Patreon is not going to help very much.
That's right. Yeah. We have an internal term that says we're not for the zero to fan problem. We're for the fan to member problem.
Right. And what I've found is that a lot of people are shocked at how much money their most loyal fans are really wanting to give them. So there's this curve, and you have a handful of people who would be very happy to give you hundreds of dollars a month, sometimes without actually asking for any of the rewards. This is the big surprise. You set up these amazing rewards, and some of your fans never bothered to give you their address to mail them the thing, or never bought, and I've talked with creators, and they're like, yeah, I reach out to these people, and they'll respond back, but they don't care about the rewards. They just want to back me. And a lot of creators, if they're not using something like Patreon, I feel like they're leaving money on the table. Yeah. If you're an author and you're just selling your book, your most passionate fan buys your book for $10, and your most mediocre fan buys your book for $10. Right. It's like that passionate fan wants something more to engage with you, and if you just would offer that to them.
The way that we think about it is there's probably two motivations for a patron to sign up. One is a support motivation. They really love what you do, and they want to continue to support your craft so that you as a creator can make this a sustainable lifestyle. And then the other side of the coin is a benefits-oriented patron, where they're signing up because of that exclusive and extra benefit that they get as part of being a member. The interesting thing is they sort of come together over time. So we've seen that folks that sign up as a support-oriented patron, migrate more towards a benefits-oriented patron. And then the folks that sign up because they want that extra episode or they want that exclusive merchandise trend more towards, this is fantastic that I get to support the creators that I really love. And to your point about the opportunity for creators and the fact that they're leaving money on the table, we've seen that the average patron spends about $12 on the platform, so more than a typical subscription to a music service or a video service. And there are a number of creators who have benefit tiers in the thousands of dollars, and they have a number of folks that are converting at that rate.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. And when you think about it, you spend $10 for Spotify, and it's split up, amongst probably tens of thousands of songs or however much you listen. Whereas if you're, spending $12 on Patreon and it's split up between maybe 5 or 6 patrons or Patreon users, this naming is a little confusing. Creators.
Yeah.
That's a much bigger piece of the pie.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm an artist on Spotify, any given listener may be giving me a few pennies, whereas I'm getting a few dollars potentially from that exact same listener if I'm on Patreon. So how does what's the best way for a creator to kind of take those two and speak to both of those motivations? Because I often see creators who are really good at help me do this, and other creators who are really good at rewards are amazing. So what's the best way to do both of those?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is for a creator, understanding the motivations of your audience. And there are certain audiences that are really support oriented. And then there are other audiences that are really benefits oriented. And then there are some that are in between. And we really advise creators to, one, sort of take a step back as they're launching their membership program and think about that motivation. But then secondly, if it's something that they don't know explicitly, maybe asking their audience and understanding exactly what their motivation is. So that's the first thing, understanding your audience.
And a great way to do this is to have a contest. And winners of the contest, so everyone enters the contest, gives you the email address, and the winners of the contest get to have a conversation with you. So you're able to build your email list while simultaneously having qualitative research as you just chit-chat with your fans.
We actually have a survey that we've been sending out to creators that they can then use with their audience base to understand those motivations.
And where does somebody get that survey?
Well, right now, it's something that we're just piloting, but it's something that hopefully in the next couple months, we're going to be offering out on our website. We're going through a complete redo of our education materials and investing more in sort of the guide to how to do Patreon. So, more. Stay tuned.
So tweet at Patreon.
More to come.
If you want to in on that secret survey, keep an eye out. It'll be available for everyone here soon. Okay, so that's how you connect with cause-based folks. What about for more reward-based folks?
Yeah. So then once you understand the motivations of your audience, it's really about highlighting the benefits of the membership, regardless of whether it's a support orientation or a benefits oriented fan. So if it's a support-oriented fan, you want to talk about what it means to you in order to have a sustainable, independent, creative career, and how the participation by your member base is helping you continue to drive that independent, creative career. For a benefits-oriented audience base, you really want to be talking to them about, in exchange for your membership dollars, this is exactly what you're going to get back in return. So that can include the exclusive merchandise that they may be getting, the exclusive episodes, but really tailoring it to this value for value exchange. So at this tier, you get X. At this tier, you get X plus Y. And rather than talking about Patreon, talk about something that people understand, a membership. Most people have a gym membership, or they've got a membership to, their credit card or something like that.
Allows you to buy all the things that you buy.
Exactly. And those have benefits. And so most people can put that in a, mental box, and they understand, hey, I'm going to fork over $12 a month in exchange for something in return.
It's like Costco, but for funny cat videos.
That's right. And one of the things that is important is that creators realize that what they're offering is valuable. And we've seen that a lot of creators are not comfortable in quote unquote asking for money. And really, they're not asking for money. They're asking for fair value for what they offer to the world. And that is a really important thing to drill home, that whatever you create is truly valuable. And what you're doing in offering a membership program is assigning a dollar value to that. And so you want to assign a dollar value based on how valuable it is to your fan base. And then also how valuable it is to you from the amount of time, energy, effort, emotion that you put into your craft. That's
right. And really what they're doing is they're helping you create your whatever it is that you're creating. So you create this amazing animated video on YouTube. Somebody who donates to you is like, I help make that possible. Right. And so maybe they can't do what you do as the artist, but they can still have that sense of ownership, that sense of like, oh my goodness, I made this happen. And that's a really powerful thing. Yeah. And one of my friends who's a client has started creating a little wall and she has bricks on the wall, and she's putting her patrons' names in the bricks. So basically lifted straight from a university funding, right? Like, oh, we have to build a new library. For $1,000 you can get your name on a brick. Yeah. And like, people love that, right? They love the idea that they help contribute even in a small way. So maybe it's $1 million to have the library named after you, but it's only a few $100 to get a brick with your name stamped on it.
And one of the things that we've seen from creators on Patreon is that this ongoing sustainable stream of income really does allow them to be independent. And for a lot of our creators, especially in either the music or the video space, they had to, and this also is true for authors or podcasters, they've had to sort of pander to sponsors or ad dollars or the sort of call it brokerage arms that allow them to get in front of their fans, be it a YouTube or Spotify or something like that. And what they've found is that it's not allowing them to be truly independent. It's tailoring what they create in order to appeal to an algorithm or appeal to what's going to drive the most eyeballs versus what's going to drive the most quality and the most deep relationship that they have with their fans. So that's to us, the really important thing about this ongoing recurring relationship with your fan base. One, it's predictable for the creator. And then two, it allows them to drive this sort of independent creation that is most appealing to their most loyal and dedicated audience base.
Exactly. And it helps even out the lumpiness of income. So I'm from primarily the author world, and authors have the worst in the sense of lumpy income. So if you're a traditionally published author, let's say you're a really successful author, right? You're selling hundreds of thousands of books and you're making a lot of money, but that money that you make for the year comes in maybe 3 checks across the entire year. So sure, that check may be for tens of thousands of dollars, but that requires a lot of discipline to not go blow it. And like, oh, we're going to Tahiti. And I have, a lot of agents that I talk with who have clients who are making very, very good money, money that they should be very comfortable living on. But because it's not coming in evenly, they're struggling and they're having to get advances and, struggling with debt and things like that. And this is one of the reasons why I was so excited about Patreon when I first found it back in 2014, was, I'd seen Kickstarter. Yeah. So let's say you're a podcast and you do a Kickstarter campaign for season 6 of your podcast. You get all of your money for season 6 all at the beginning. Yeah. So I sure hope you did a good job on budgeting and planning. Whereas with Patreon, you're able to even that out. And what's great is that if you're an author, you still get to have those lumps, right? Yeah. The Patreon doesn't really take away from your book sales. No. And the people who are, quote, buying a book through Patreon are going to be spending way more for that book through Patreon. Because that's not really why they're on. Patreon's not a place to come for deals, right? It's like, oh, if I want a deal on your music, I'll listen to it for free on Spotify. I'll listen to it for free on YouTube. It's for your more passionate fans. And I think that model really helps reduce the anxiety. Yeah. Because a lot of authors are not making tons of money on Patreon, but just the idea that they know for sure rent is covered or the mortgage is covered next month allows them to take those bigger risks.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, we see Patreon or membership in general. It doesn't necessarily need to be Patreon, but membership in general is sort of the core sustaining stream of income for your career. It's like your paycheck. And then there are these other opportunities like a book deal or like a sponsorship deal or you name it, that are these bumps. And they're, as you said, lumpy, but they are fantastic. And the nice thing about Patreon is that we're not in the business of sort of being a exclusive platform that would cut you off from having to do those or being allowed to do those types of opportunities. In fact, to us, as long as creators get paid, that's us achieving our mission. And so we really just want to give you that sustainable stream of income so that you can then be, more empowered in your craft.
Very cool. So to help understand Patreon, I want to kind of get your take on some of your competitors. Yeah. So now realize some of these competitors are companies that I personally love, so don't be too mean. Yeah. But I want to understand kind of how it's different. So like, for instance, Kickstarter and Patreon. How is Patreon different from Kickstarter?
Candidly, we don't really see Kickstarter as a competitor. I think it's a very additive stream of income that can serve a certain component of the audience or not audience, but creator base that needs a one-time, single influx of cash. To us, what we're really architecting is the way to monetize your audience on an ongoing basis, whereas Kickstarter is monetizing your audience on a one-time basis. And there's a challenge there because your audience participates for a single moment in time around a single project, and then they have to figure out, the next time that you want to go back to that trough, you've got to figure out a whole new campaign to run with them. And we've seen a number of folks use both, where they need that single influx of cash up front, but then they realize that they need to convert that audience base into an ongoing, consistent membership base. So, from our standpoint, the difference is that you're entering into essentially a contract with your fan base. And that's great. It has responsibilities. There's a ton of investment that needs to go alongside that. But we hope that it will be more fruitful in the long run. And it also allows you to offer more compelling rewards because you're thinking about a customer on a lifetime value basis rather than or a fan on a lifetime value basis rather than on a one-time basis. So if you're thinking about merch, one-time basis, there's a very little bit of margin there. But
it doesn't matter how high quality the shirts are if they're only buying it one time. Exactly. Whereas if you want them to buy the 2018 and the 2019 shirt, they need to have a good experience of the 2018 shirt.
Right.
Yeah, I will say it's easier to get people excited about a Kickstarter campaign because it's for that limited period of time, but it's also way more exhausting for the creator.
Yeah.
And like when somebody's done with a Kickstarter campaign, they really need a month to recover because it's just so much energy focused in such a narrow amount of time. And in some ways, it's kind of like harvesting. Like you've done all this work the whole year, and then you have to bring in the whole harvest right before it rains. You don't know when it's going to rain. So you're like the peasants, in the fields working like crazy, bringing the harvest, and afterwards you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything for the next month. Whereas Patreon is more like that greenhouse where it's a little bit more work over time, but it's less work in any given month.
Yeah. And if you think about the way that the world is moving, most services are turning into a subscription service. And so we believe that art and creation is likely going to transition into a subscription service. And there are a number of examples of, call it sort of newly established paradigms like YouTube and like podcasts that work on a serialized, ongoing, recurring basis. So our membership model aligns really well with the way that those creators offer their creations in the world. There are other industries or other categories on Patreon that are a little bit different. Musicians or authors, fine artists, they typically work up to a single moment in time, and then there is some sort of outcome after that single moment in time. And what we've seen is that there are a lot of folks in those categories who are trying to transition the way that they create and transition the way that they engage with their fans into an ongoing recurring subscription. And it's just sort of a paradigm that's happening not only in the creator industry, but in software. I now have a Wi-Fi subscription to United Wi-Fi. Everybody's moving.
When I was a kid, I bought Photoshop.
Yeah.
Now I subscribe to Photoshop.
Exactly. Yeah. And the hope is that for your fan base, it's a smaller amount of money per month, but it's a more valuable relationship on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, that's really good. And it is a bit of a paradigm shift, but I think that it can be really good. And one interesting thing that I've noticed in the author space is that Patreon is bringing back the short story. Mm-hmm. So short stories in the 60s and 70s and 80s, there were these magazines printed with paper that would have short stories in them, and readers would buy them and everyone was happy. And then the internet happened and it more or less killed the short story. Yeah. So you'd have these anthologies printed, and there's a few short story anthologies that are survived and they're in their, 40th year or whatever, but it's not a big part of the market. Most people who write short stories were not getting paid for short stories. And as a craft, it really died, which was really unfortunate because there's a lot of really powerful storytelling that can happen in that short format. Sometimes the short at the beginning of the Pixar film is as moving as the entire Pixar film. It's like you're crying. You're like, why did you do this to me, Pixar?
The two volcanoes. I don't know if you've seen that one. That one was fantastic.
Yeah, we actually have a printing of that in our house. My wife and I love that. But yeah, it's really emotionally moving, and they didn't need an hour and a half to tell that story. And what's happening, I'm noticing, is that more and more authors, they're looking for that thing to give their readers every month. Yeah. And so while they're working on their big epic fantasy, they're able to write short stories as they go, which is great for their craft, but it's also, they're actually getting paid for that short story. And, but based off of the subscriptions, it's a really great reward. And I love to see that happening. It's interesting to see things kind of come and go. Like Pulp Fiction was really popular in the 1920s when paperbacks were invented and books got cheap, and then it kind of went away, and Pulp Fiction's totally back. Yeah. So the Kindle, it's like there's a Pulp Fiction revolution, right? As fast as you can. Let's create as many books as you can. Yeah. There's a certain kind of reader who will read 100 books in a year, and they want to read, all 20 of your books in a series. Yeah. And it's fun to watch that pendulum go back and forth. And it seems like Patreon's in a good spot on that pendulum.
Well, the other thing I would say is that your fan base is supporting the artist. And there's a bunch of other things that you do outside of just your specific craft that are compelling to your audience base. Great example is that some folks in the music world offer an insight into what they're doing behind the scenes. It could be in the studio, it could be on the road, on their tour, it could just be their friend group, but they're offering that inside scoop on who they are as an artist. And that is really compelling to your most loyal fans. Another example, I had a conversation with Mickey Kendall, who's a writer, and she started offering recipes on really esoteric stuff on Twitter. And her audience base said, I'd love to see more of that. And this is not related to her, craft of being a writer and an author, but she's able to sort of excite and engage with her audience base around these recipes. And that's been a significant driver of her ongoing engagement with her fan base. So when we consult with creators, it's also about identifying the things that they do that may be slightly tangential to the specific thing that they're creating that offers their fan base an opportunity to engage with them in a more compelling way. The other thing to note, and this sort of gets back into the, are we similar or different than Kickstarter? We also see Patreon as sort of the nugget of membership, but more importantly, the relationship that the creator and their fan have that travels with them across the internet. So that could mean that a reward is opening up a new area of your website that is only available to members. Or it can mean opening up a chat server where you get to engage with your creator, like on a Discord or something like that. It could be opening up a live stream. And those things are digitally fulfilled rewards that offer sort of a deeper engagement level with the creator. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on patreon.com. And it also is something that could only really be done in an ongoing subscription relationship, because it would be weird for somebody to offer a Kickstarter just to have a single live stream with them or something like that.
And you're doing a lot of traffic copying at that point. It's like, oh wait, have you paid? Have you not paid?
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of hassle.
Yeah.
It's a challenge a lot of co-working spaces have, right? They have to, if they have day passes, they have to have somebody there to check at the door to make sure you bought your day pass. So now I know YouTube is also rolling out their own version of Patreon. It's their new subscription platform. Yeah. How is that different from Patreon?
Yeah. We're really excited that YouTube is starting to think about how to
everyone wants to be Patreon.
Yeah. Well, how to get creators paid. And to us, that is somewhat of our mission, because we've sort of influenced the market to make them understand that there is value in offering this subscription service. The difference, I think, is that many creators don't see themselves as YouTubers. They see themselves as creators who distribute through YouTube, but they may distribute through 5 other platforms. And that specific subscription only is in the context of YouTube engagement. And to us, we think that your fan base is going to live with you across the internet. They may be a YouTube creator. They may also have a Twitch channel. They may have a blog. They may have a Discord server. And there needs to be that sort of like pass that you have as a fan across every single one of those engagement platforms. And so we believe that a lot of creators are, one, sort of reticent and questioning YouTube's motivations. That's the first thing. But then 2, they don't necessarily just want to have singular engagement with YouTube.
Yeah, because this isn't the first time YouTube's tried to make this work. They had a tip jar back in the day. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. The tip jar that nobody used. I will say, tip jars online generally don't get used. Yeah. So we have we develop a WordPress plugin. It's a free WordPress plugin. There's a premium version, but you can also donate to the free version of the WordPress plugin. And I think in the history of the plugin, we've brought in about $5 in donations. This is a plugin that's running on thousands of websites all over the world, and it's just like that as a revenue model has not worked. It'll be interesting to see if the YouTube button works, because in some ways, if you want to help out creators, sign up for YouTube Red. Like your view as a YouTube Red subscriber is way more valuable to that creator than your 0.05 cent watching of the commercial that you skip after 15 seconds. Yeah. And I found that a lot of people are really hesitant to sign up for YouTube Red. It's only $10, $12. It's not like it's really expensive. And yet even that, it's not very popular.
Well, the value proposition is a little muddled. It's difficult for a fan to understand what they're getting back in return and how it ultimately goes to support the artist. So that's the first thing. I think also there's and internally at YouTube, a lack of direction as to whether subscription revenue is the core value proposition of their product or advertising revenue is the core value proposition of their product.
Oh, well, no, it's definitely advertising revenue.
All right, so I was being fair.
Let's be clear here. YouTube is owned by Alphabet, which is basically Google, and they make billions and billions of dollars, being the number one place that people spend their advertising dollars, and they do advertising really well. And I will say, as a podcaster, sometimes I'm envious of how well monetized YouTube is from an advertising perspective. So for a podcast to sell ads, you have to get a sponsor who inserts the file into the MP3 somehow, but everyone's getting the same ad. Whereas on YouTube, if you visit Casper's website, so help you for the next 30 days, you're gonna have nothing but Casper ads on YouTube, and that's regardless of what kind of video you're watching. So you're watching a video on news, Casper ad. You're watching a video with cute puppies, Casper ad, because they have that tracking data that tracks you around the web, and they do a really good job at that. Like, I don't think anyone's one's ever going to beat Google at advertising. Like maybe Facebook, but I don't know. If I were a betting man, my money's on Google.
Totally. I was trying to be sort of, politically correct, that giving them the benefit of the doubt that they may be investing in subscriptions. But I think that that's also at the core of the problem, is that this is an ancillary product offering that they're rolling out because they see that there's a desire in the market for creators to engage with their fan base in an ongoing subscription relationship. I just going back to your point about they do advertising really well. I think they do advertising really well when it relates to them making money off of advertising. But the reason that Patreon exists is that Jack, our CEO, was a creator on YouTube, and he would have millions of views on every single one of his videos. And to this day, some of those videos, despite having millions of views, have only made him a few $100s in advertising revenue. And so while they may be very effective at serving up ads to fans and helping advertisers or brands get in front of those eyeballs, they're not very effective at paying out the artists for their creations. And we've seen a lot of folks recently through the demonetization challenges move over to Patreon because they haven't been able to drive a sustainable income. And these are folks with 12 million subscribers on YouTube that are struggling to even make ends meet, despite the fact that 6 months ago, a year ago, they were making in the 20s to 30s to 40s of thousands of dollars per month in ad revenue. The flip of the switch from an algorithm standpoint can mean boom or bust for a lot of these creators. And from a Patreon standpoint, we never want to put them in that position. So we just want to give them the infrastructure to be able to engage with their fans however they see fit.
And I will say that's something a lot of people are concerned about, especially people in the center of the country. So there's this sense that, well, these companies that are based on the coasts, they have a very different value system, and they have a very strong belief as to what political views should be. And if you don't agree with our political views, we'll cut you off from money. And that's really scary, like, especially when you feel so powerless. Like, oh, there's nothing I can do about Facebook, not showing my post to people, or YouTube demonetizing me. How is Patreon navigating that? Because Patreon's located in San Francisco. So I imagine it's pretty monocultural when it comes to political views. You're not going to see lots of diversity there. Yeah. I'm guessing, but you tell me.
Yeah. So two things. One, Patreon, our brand promise is that we're not going to get in between the relationship between a creator and their fans. And internally, one of our core behaviors and one of our core values as a business is that we're creator first. So we're going to build products that help creators engage with their fan base. And from our standpoint, those creators could be across an entire political spectrum. If they have an established fan base and they want to use our infrastructure in order to engage with their fan base, more power to them, regardless of political belief. Now, we do have, privacy policies and, rules and guidelines on what you can offer through Patreon. And we do draw the line at certain areas, hate speech or, things on the, pornography side of the spectrum. But regardless, we are very, we're an open platform. And people can participate as they see fit. And, in that way, if your audience can choose to support a creator, if it is something that Patreon doesn't agree with, or somebody, internally at Patreon, that doesn't stop them from using the platform. And we've got really successful creators completely across the political spectrum. And I think that that's actually a unique differentiator of Patreon versus a platform that is essentially run by ads, because the ads dictate what can be valuable on the platform.
Absolutely. And you have big corporations who will bully companies into suppressing, speech they don't like. Exactly. I remember there was a video that made fun of Vegemite, which is a food that's very popular in Australia. And it was an American guy, and he's tasting Vegemite, and he's getting like super sick, and it's a hilarious video and had millions of views. Terrible for the Vegemite brand. And they were able to get the video taken down. And after a while, and I don't know if it's been put back up, this was years ago, but it was like, this has violated some terms of service. And I was like, what on earth did this guy, whose copyright? It was just like, how is this possible? But from YouTube's perspective, their relationship with Vegemite, the corporation, is far more valuable than their relationship with some guy who's eating it in a YouTube video. And I think that that creator first is really powerful. And just because you're located in San Francisco doesn't mean that you have to be like, oh, you all have to agree with us, right? There are other companies in Silicon Valley like Twitter that, we're the free speech wing of the free speech party is how they articulate it, right? They're like, just let the speech happen and things will, shuffle down, the truth will win in the end. And I think that that's a really strong position to have. Yeah. So that's one of the things I like about Patreon, because I will say Kickstarter has, I've had some trouble with them with some of my clients, especially in the early days. I will say Kickstarter's gotten a lot better, but Mary DeMuth, who we had on the show a few episodes ago, her campaign was rejected from Kickstarter. It was a book on overcoming sexual assault, sexual abuse, but they considered it self-help, and that was not good enough. It's like that did not meet their hipster standards. It was like, this isn't artistic enough. I was like, really? Like, that's what that's how you're gonna play it. So she ended up going on Indiegogo, which was much more laid back. Indiegogo, I feel, is more like Patreon. They're like, hey, if you have people who want to, support you, you're not forcing anyone to buy your product, right? It's not like Patreon is like, hey, you must become a patron of this creator you don't like, right? It's like, it's up to those creators and those patrons on who they support.
Yeah. And I think one of the other things is right now we don't invest in discoverability. So we're not trying to push to our fan base a certain creator based on who you subscribe to. It's all about the creator engaging with their fan base. In fact, a significant portion, probably in the 70 to 80% of fans came to Patreon because the creator specifically mentioned Patreon. Patreon's not going out there and recruiting potential patrons on behalf of creators. We're giving the creator the infrastructure to engage with that fan base. And to the point about being creator first, the really exciting thing about the business is that it was founded by a creator who saw a problem in the market and has consistently sort of been that chief creator in order to help us better build products for creators, and also realize that the existing platforms that are out there have some type of bias to another constituent. And we don't want to enter in that type of situation where Patreon is beholden to another type of constituent.
He who pays the piper calls the tune. And when you're the piper, you really care about who's paying you, ultimately. So real quick before we go, tell us a little bit about the roadmap. I realize you can't talk about specifics. And if you make promises of deliverables for engineers, they will have your head on it. So I've worked in software companies. I know how that is. But give us an idea. What is Patreon working on in 2018?
Yeah. So there are a few things. One, we recognize that there's a ton of cost of fulfillment associated with running a membership campaign, and we want to be able to reduce that cost so that people can offer more compelling benefits to their fan base. That can include building out more sophisticated fulfillment management tools, essentially a more robust CRM, so that people can track what is owed to people on a given recurring basis.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So that right now is in the beta rollout phase. We call it the Fulfillment Manager, and it's essentially just a really robust CRM. And we hope to automate a lot of the functions that happen on the platform so that you can do automated fulfillment of different benefits. The second is that we're recognizing that one of the biggest costs of fulfillment for the business is around merchandise. And so we're investing in capabilities that reduce the cost of that fulfillment, so that you can offer really compelling benefits around exclusive merchandise, and also offer it as a time-based benefit so that people can, stick around for 6 months because they know that the exclusive t-shirts coming out, or stick around for 2 years because they know that the, custom CD, as an example, is coming out. So that's the second. So cost of fulfillment in general, cost of fulfillment around merchandise explicitly, and then also investing in our platform capabilities. So about a year ago, we released a platform API, which allows us to tie that membership nugget into other platforms for engagement. And we have about 30 different applications that are built on top of Patreon's API. They could be live streaming mechanisms. MailChimp is a thing that we offer so you can have a custom mailing list based on your patron data. And there are a variety of other things that we offer on top of that API, but we're heavily investing there because to us, if Patreon sort of fades into the background and allows you to run your membership wherever you want to engage with your fans, that's a super positive outcome for us. And then there are a ton of sort of benefits that we'll offer through the platform. So we just released a ethereal video, which is kind of like a private Snapchat, if you will, called Lens, which allows people to engage with their fans and offer, time-based video. So you can offer a video for 24 hours, and it's only for your cordoned off component of your membership base. And yeah, those are some of the areas. we are also really heavily investing in the infrastructure of our platform. Now that we're processing this amount of payments per year, we need our platform to be hyper robust. So we're hiring a lot of engineers around billing, a lot of engineers around infrastructure and those types of things.
Yeah, because scaling from 0 transactions to millions of dollars of transactions and hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions, that's can be a little complicated. Yeah. I will say I'm really excited about those features that encourage patrons to stay patrons for long periods of time. Because that's one of the challenges is somebody, let's say a Q&A episode, right? Like, that's a really great benefit. Yeah. But after a while, fans are asking the same questions over and over again. And so that benefit diminishes its value over time. And so having there's an exclusive t-shirt for people who've been a patron for a year, that is a really solid strategy to help offset that. Yeah. So while the Q&A episodes may be less interesting because people are asking the same questions, and you want to answer those questions, right? From the new fans who are like, oh my gosh, where do your ideas come from, right? Yeah. It's like, how many times do you get that question? There's never a good answer to it. Yeah. But you're able to offset that with features that kind of, mature over time.
Yeah. At a super high level, we've invested in product pods that are focusing on how do you acquire patrons, then how do you retain those patrons, and then how do you also drive up the amount of subscription based on more compelling benefits at higher tiers. And so we're really trying to think about that entire creator experience and engaging with their patrons, and what are the things that people are doing really well on our platform that we can then suss out and productize. What are some areas where they're struggling and that we need to reduce the cost or the friction associated with offering those benefits, and getting more deeply engaged with our creator base. Now that we have so many folks, we can really learn from them. So we're investing on that from a product standpoint. And then, from my standpoint, my team is focused on essentially consulting and teaching and engaging with the creator base to understand what those things are that have really driven success, but then also scaling that out across all of the creators that are on our platform. So investing in a creator success function, investing in a lot of marketing and webinars and tutorials and materials that people can use to drive their success. So that's an area of investment for the business. It may not be product, but it's, all with the intention of making creators more successful on our platform.
That's awesome. Well, very exciting things to come. I'm looking forward to watching all of that roll out. Bremner, thank you so much for joining us on the Creative Funding Show.
Yeah, this is really exciting. Thanks.
Full disclosure, not only does the Creative Funding Show have its own Patreon page, but we're also affiliates with Patreon. Speaking of which, if you'd like to sign up for your own Patreon account and get some extra money, you can do it with our affiliate link. So if you go to creativefunding.show/Patreon affiliate link, you get an extra, I think it's $50 or so, once you sign up as a creator on Patreon. So thank you so much for listening to Thomas Umstattd on the Creative Funding Show.